I recently listened to an episode of This American Life called Good Grief. In it, Sean Cole, a producer of the show, shared 4 different life events that happened to him over just 2 months. The first he saw coming. His stepfather, Ed, who he adored, died of a really aggressive lung cancer. He was his stepfather, but also his confidant, his good friend, his mentor, his parent. Sean shared he wanted to mourn Ed fully, as his mother had died 5 years earlier, and he'd tried to get back to normal too quickly. He wanted to process the grief. He also shared that having a parent die makes you examine your life. And at 49, Sean realized he had much he still wanted to do in life, and that having kids was not part of that equation. And so just a few weeks after his stepfather's passing, he told his long-term girlfriend, the woman he loved, who he spent nearly every second of the day with thanks to COVID, and the only person he was really seeing outside of family, again, thanks to COVID, that he didn't want a child. She told him she loved him, didn't want to abandon him, but that she also had to take care of herself. They broke up, loss number 2. Then, 2 weeks later, she sent him a picture of a positive home pregnancy test. She'd missed just 1 day of her birth control, but that's all it took. They agreed to meet to discuss what they would do that Saturday. However, that Saturday, he received a text from his stepmother, his biological dad's wife, saying, "Your father's had a heart attack." For the second time in 2 months, he had to say goodbye to a parent. Sean shares, "I stood right by his bed for a lot of my visit to the hospital. His wife and 3 stepkids, a couple of grandkids were there too. And I felt bad for them and for my dad, and this is strange. I knew I was sad, but it was like I was holding the sadness in my hands, outside of my body, because I didn't know where to put it." His father died, loss number 3. His ex-girlfriend terminated the pregnancy. Sean shares, "This was the outcome I'd hoped for, but it's not like it felt good, and it never would. It was its own kind of loss." 4 losses, none of them fully mourned before the next loss came. And he was left with this detached sadness, one he knew was there but couldn't fully feel or process. This is cumulative grief. This is what many of us are experiencing right now. In March 2020, a large, pervasive loss settled over all of us. The loss of normalcy, of routine, of safety, predictability, control. This loss was quickly followed by others, including the loss of jobs and financial security, of gatherings, of social lives, of important moments like weddings, graduations, birthday parties, and the most heavy loss of all, the loss of loved ones. While the grief we experience after losing a loved one may be the toughest grief provoked by any loss, big or small, we know that any loss can feel debilitating. Just look to our prophet Jonah that Mrs. Burney just chanted about. He falls to pieces after his fig tree dies, a tree he had for only 1 day. Big or small, our losses are real. Judaism teaches that grief has a purpose, and science supports what our ancient sages knew long before official studies were done. Grief is how our bodies adapt to loss and process it enough for us to move forward. In Psalm 42, the psalmist wants desperately to visit the temple and be close to God. We can relate. The fact that he can't get there fills him with anguish. He keeps trying to comfort himself, but he can't quite contain, subdue, or soothe his despair. He says, like a hind crying for water, my soul cries for you, O God. My soul thirsts for you, God, the living God. Oh, when will I come to appear before God? My tears have been my food day and night. I'm taunted with, where is your God? When I think of this, I pour out my soul, how I walked with the crowd, moved with them, the festive throng, the house of God with joyous shouts of praise. Why so downcast, my soul? Why disquieted within me? Have hope in God, I will yet praise God, my ever-present help, my God. We see in the psalmist the extreme swings of emotion, the pain that is overwhelming, the mourning for how things once were, the longing for God, the ever-present question of why. That first line, like a hind crying for water, my soul cries for you, O God. A hind's only purpose is to hold water. Without water, what is it? The psalmist wonders as well, what is my purpose now? Where are you? I want to be filled by your presence. There's this dance happening between despair and hope, both existing in one person at the same time. We joke that Jews are like everyone else, only more so. We feel grief deeply, we wallow in it, but only to live and celebrate life again. We celebrate life with gusto, with song and dance, food, wine, gathering. We confront our emotions, which helps us to make us the resilient people we are. But what happens when we can't comfort each other in gathering, and then we can't confront our losses and celebrate our joys the same way that we used to? When grieving is interrupted, delayed, or compounded by new losses. COVID-19 has created an environment where many people are processing multiple losses at once. So what does this mean for the way that we grieve? Cumulative grief is what happens when you do not have time to process one loss before incurring another. The emotions just build and build, becoming more and more intense. They overwhelm us, and sometimes we simply turn off. Typically, cumulative grief is the exception to the rule, not the norm, but the pandemic has flipped that script. These days, the majority of the world's population is experiencing cumulative grief. So what tools does Judaism have for this moment? We all know Judaism has rituals to deal with grief. These rituals are there for a reason. They're there so we find ourselves surrounded by loved ones. They're there so we confront and see the loss is real. And they are there so we can process and grieve each loss and help to stop the accumulation. They teach us resilience and break ourselves out of the numbness and inability to function. So here are just a few of our tools and some ideas about how to achieve the same goals during this time of enduring COVID restrictions and cumulative grief. From the moment of death until the burial, a mourner is called an onen. The onen has no religious obligations except to attend to the practical necessities for arranging the funeral. The Jewish understanding is that an onen cannot focus on anything other than the immediate issue of the burial and should not be expected to be capable of any ritual observances, even those that might otherwise be performed on a daily basis, not even having to say the Shema. Working from home, having little to no separation from one area of our lives to the other is extremely taxing. Now, when we're dealing with loss and mourning, it becomes even more difficult. It's hard for us to stop working because we're always taking the work home with us. Even when experiencing loss, we think, well, I can just click on that link. It's only a Zoom after all. Our tradition demands of us to stop. It's not a question of can you keep working? Of course you can. It's a lesson that sometimes we need to stop. That's the lesson of Shabbat, after all. People had been working without a day off for generations before God gave us the commandment to rest. We need to stop when we experience loss as well. The burial, while hard, is also incredibly healing. It makes us confront our grief. We share memories about our loved ones, we laugh, we cry. We see the beauty of their lives by contemplating their deaths. We tear our clothes. Or today, a ribbon that we wear the week after burial. This serves as a sign on the outside of the torn hearts we have on the inside. It means we cannot deny that we have had a loss. It's there for everyone to see. The smile may try and mask or hide our pain, but the kriya tear gives us away. Our heart is torn, and we physically then bury our loved ones. I can't tell you how many times people have told me they can't stand hearing the earth hit the coffin. It's a visceral sound. That's the point. Judaism wants us to confront death, to see we're strong enough to hold ourselves up when our hearts are broken, that we can continue to do for our loved ones even after they have died, and that death is real. In most Israeli funerals, there is no coffin. Teacher and mystical Reb Mimi Feinberg shared a story with our rabbinic association about how she attended a funeral where a mother climbed down into the grave to take her 3-year-old child into her arms and place her baby down for her final rest. It does not get more real than this. Our minds have trouble registering loss. They go into survival mode, pushing us toward denial and distraction. But Judaism says no. Confront this. Feel this. The thud of the earth on the casket is like the knocking on our hearts. It involves our senses, sight, sound, touch, smell, despair, and hope dancing together. Many of us lost people from last Yom Kippur to this Yom Kippur, and we're not able to be there physically. It leaves us feeling distanced and detached, and somewhat in denial that this person is no more. So if we can't physically be there, what can we do to help us confront the reality of the loss? First, we still need to stop, disrupt the routine for the purpose of mourning. We need to concretize the loss by externalizing it. This may mean writing and sharing a eulogy or memories with someone you are able to see, a clergy person, a family member, or a device. But I would also encourage you to make it physical. Dig a hole, bury that eulogy, or a copy of an old photo. Paint a picture, even if you're not an artist. Write a poem, burn it in a fire, tear something. Next, Judaism requires a meal of consolation. Remember to eat, to take care of yourself, and remember that the meal is traditionally provided to the mourner. Let others take care of you, even if you can just order it for yourself. When we let others nourish us, we realize we are not alone, even when we are physically alone because of COVID restrictions. That food dropped off at the door allows those who care about you the gift of being able to help in some way, and you the gift of seeing that there's still a community that loves you and wants to be there for you. We've become bad at both taking care of other people when they are in mourning and allowing others to take care of us. Even before COVID, the Shiva, which is supposed to be a week where the mourners are taken care of by the community, where others bring food, take out the trash, and surround the mourner with love, had become yet another responsibility for the mourner to provide to their family and friends. The mourner was ordering food to feed those who might stop by, cleaning the house for them, cleaning up after them. Jewish tradition says this person who has experienced the loss of a loved one needs to be taken care of by us. They have no responsibilities but to bury their dead. Everything else is on us, their community. So how can we do this now? We can set up a food train for the person so they don't get food for an army when it's just them or just their family, but guarantees that food comes daily, telling the person you deserve daily nourishment and care. We can help with errands, whether that's going to the store or dry cleaner, pick up the slack at work for them. We can call if we can't visit and just say, Hineni, here I am. And to those in mourning, tell people how they can help. Death reminds us that much of life is out of our control. When we let go of control and see that others will be there for us, that's a great lesson in faith and in relationship. Another way we can process loss is by observing Shiva, the first week after burial. Take the whole week. You won't regret it. But if you don't, you might regret it. The world can and will wait for you. Use every day that week to journal, to share a story, to do something in honor of your loved one. Even if we're physically alone, we're never really alone. We have memories, stories, legacies to attend to. Use the week to make the presence of your loved one felt. Then there's this beautiful custom at the end of the week to put on shoes and walk around the block, return to the world. Miami is such a beautiful place. Just walk. No headphones, no telephones. Take in the beauty of God's creation, the beauty of your neighbors' homes, their kids running in the yard. Notice life. During COVID, a walk around the block has become medicine for so many of us. It takes us out of our homes, away from our screens. We see our neighbors, sometimes people we've lived next to but hadn't ever seen before. We get out of our heads for a few minutes. We feel the sun's warmth, and too, remember that life continues. We are altered but very much alive. We joke that every Jewish holiday has the same message. They came, they tried to kill us, we survived, now let's eat. But this teaches a valuable lesson, that Judaism wants us to confront life's losses, to see them, feel them, commemorate them, and then return to life. Now, life won't be the same. It can't be the same, but it can still be full. There's still beauty, still laughter, still love, still reason to celebrate. Can we mourn every little loss fully? Maybe not, but we can fully mourn the people we've lost. It won't make the pain go away. It will still be there. Grief isn't something you simply get over, but it is something you learn to live with and work through. This COVID fog began to lift briefly, then it came back. While we can't afford to take a week off after every little life disruption or missed function, we do need to realize and confront our pain. We can't stay in survival mode. We can't continue to deny and deflect because we are well past the yard site and we need to return to life. So we should be honest with ourselves and others about our losses. Ask for help, be there for one another, and celebrate each and every day because we are still here. A Hasidic rabbi talking about Hannah moving her lips in prayer imagines her prayer is, "Let me not die while I am still alive." Let us not die while we are still alive. Let us not be numb, flat. Let us feel, weep, mourn, laugh, and celebrate. Let us feel fully and live fully. because we are still alive despite all our losses, and life is the greatest gift of all. May the memories of your loved ones be for a blessing.